me say something about COPE leader training, that you're going through what we call level 1, and that's a 2 to 3 day workshop, depending upon how we configure it. And it's really a basic introduction to running this kind of parenting program. And I hope for some of you there will be skills and elements of this training that are helpful for you in the different contexts in which you work. Level 2 for us is supervised co-leading, and that's an opportunity to run a COPE group or two with the support of an experienced leader. And that allows you to practice some of the skills that we're really going to just have a chance to introduce you to here in level 1. We run level 3, which is an advanced one-day workshop, and that's to work on some of the challenges that most leaders of large groups find. It's difficult, for example, to complete a COPE group in time, so time management is constantly a challenge in a large group like this. In a large group of parents, you will inevitably have differences of opinion, and how does one deal with some of the conflicts and disagreements that may occur in a large group. Discouraged parents oftentimes who just find that they're trying their best, but they're not making the progress that they had hoped that they have. And how do you motivate discouraged parents? So those are some of the topics that we work on in advanced leader training. And then level 4 is a video certification to ensure that you've actually mastered the key components of the training. One of the things that I think you talked about in your introductions were the difficulties in actually getting people to participate in the various kinds of parenting efforts that you've tried, and I think that is a universal experience. And so one of the most important parts of running a COPE group is just kind of the prerequisites of setting it up. And again, for leaders who are going to run this program, level 1 leader training is important. In communities that are thinking about setting up a COPE program, we sit down and try to identify who the potential leaders might be in a community. They may be social workers, they may be psychologists, they may be, in our community, early childhood educators, they may be teachers, but to take a look at who from different agencies or different organizations might contribute to developing programs. We try to develop COPE programs at the community level as opposed to at the single agency level. So we try to get agencies to collaborate and cooperate in identifying who those leaders might be. One of the things we try to do is to run a kids group. The evidence in our studies is clear that if we can provide childcare, then there are a group of families that will be able to successfully engage that simply would not be able to attend or attend consistently in the absence of that. So who might the kids group leaders be in the community? Sometimes we train students to run our kids groups. Sometimes we use teachers who are in training. Sometimes we use members of different agencies. But to sit down and talk about who could we get, who could we recruit to run our kids groups. Identify potential collaborators. Who are the agencies that we might get involved? So in our community, for example, we often run COPE programs in schools. We run them in the context of a number of children's mental health service providers. They may be provided by other organizations, early childhood educational organizations, but is to try to collaborate as a community in creating this opportunity. And that's important because to really maximize utilization, we're going to have to create a system in which parents have some choices about locations, some choices about times. And if several agencies can collaborate in running a program, the participants who come from that agency are going to have more choices. They're going to have more opportunities because we're collaborating in doing this. We try to plan an annual schedule of courses rather than waiting and saying, well, maybe we should put together a parenting program. We set it up a year or maybe 2 years in advance. So schedule fall courses. We try to schedule our fall courses starting in late September, and that gives us a chance to advertise after kids get back to school, and it allows us to get a program completed before the holiday season, because once we get into December, then parents will miss oftentimes some of the key final sessions of parenting programs. And so we want to fit it into a timetable that works for parents. We start up after the first of the year and run a parenting course. A lot of parents sort of kind of start the new year fresh. They've got a resolution to work on their parenting skills. In Canada, there's nothing else to do in the winter, so it's a good time to run a program. And then a spring course, we find that attendance begins to wane in the spring. The weather's starting to warm up, the days are longer, kids can play outside, and oftentimes the motivation to participate in a parenting program goes down. And we run a series of summer short courses. By and large, attendance is highest in the fall. That's a time when kids are getting back to school, parents are starting again. It's a good time to run programs. One of the things we try to get the collaborating agencies or organizations who are going to run a COPE course to do is to collaborating and setting up times. So we'll run a program on Thursday mornings, and maybe our colleagues here will run one on Tuesday nights, and maybe another agency might put one together on Thursday nights, and maybe you guys would run one on Saturday mornings. And we try to make access to all of those options available to everybody from all of those agencies. So parents have a choice of times. And times are a critical factor in determining when parents can participate. And there are parents who in our community will only come out during the day. They often live in some disadvantaged areas, higher crime areas, and they're not comfortable coming out at night. But they'll drop their kids off at school and stop in at a course if it's located conveniently and take advantage of that. There are other parents who simply can't come during the day. Their work schedules or school prevents them from doing that, and so an evening course is really the only option for them. Most of the parents in our modeling studies, our preference studies, indicate that the evening is really the only feasible time for them to engage in a weekly parenting program or Saturday morning. So if we can get several agencies to collaborate in setting up a community-based program and then strategically set the time so that we have a range of choices, then we're most likely to get more parents in. The more choices we can give parents about times, the better. Parent training is very much like real estate. Location, location, and location are critical. And we have, over the years, I think, drifted from thinking that community locations were great because the community is friendly and clinics make people anxious, to thinking about travel time and bus schedules and logistical factors as really being the key factors. So we try to locate COPE courses in settings that minimize travel time. I think more economically advantaged parents in our communities find that travel time is less of an issue. They have transportation, they're willing to drive a ways. So we try to locate those courses strategically. Interesting thing about parenting programs, we were doing some focus groups, and we asked parents why they had decided to take advantage of particular courses. And some parents said, well, I took a course because it was at our neighborhood school, and that was a comfortable place for me. Another parent said, well, I took a course down on the East Mountain. And we said, well, why did you drive all the way down there? And she said, so my neighbors wouldn't know that I'm taking the course. And so some parents will choose proximity and a neighborhood program, and other parents will choose a program that allows more anonymity. And those are personal factors that can have a big influence on decisions. And so locations is really important. I don't know what the mechanism is. I think the Chinese have models for thinking about this, but there are clearly locations that just seem to work well. The atmosphere is such that parents seem to enjoy it. It's a comfortable setting. It's got good acoustics. This room has pretty good acoustics. It's got carpets. It's large enough that we can spread out, but not so big that it feels like we're lost in here. So there are rooms that have a good size. They have good acoustics. They work well for running large group programs. Libraries and schools are for us often a first choice. They're typically carpeted, they're quiet, they have a nice atmosphere that sets the occasion for learning. So locations are really important, and we find that attendance is just higher in some locations, and so we'll go back to those particular locations. And then advertise, and advertise, and advertise again. I think our colleagues in marketing research say that people don't pay attention to advertisements until they've seen them something like 5 times. They really don't even process them. So one of the things about advertising, I think that for children's mental health service providers, is that we're hesitant to do that. You know, we have long waiting lists. We kind of don't want to create even more of a workload that we don't have the resources to deal with. And so it's not something that we're comfortable with or very effective at doing. So we try to advertise as much as we possibly can. We like to use newspapers. We like to use the radio. We like to use public television. We like to put posters up. We like to advertise in many different ways as possible. And if we talk to parents who have come out to a parenting course and say, how'd you hear about the course? You'll hear from all those things. Well, I saw it on cable television, or I was my family physician and I saw a poster in his office and there was a flyer and so I grabbed it, or a neighbor of mine told me about the course, or the school suggested that I consider doing it, or I saw that article on bullying and the COPE program in the newspaper, and I thought, well, this is something that I want to work on. Yes?
How are you funded?
Our funding mostly is publicly funded. Canada is a publicly funded health and mental health system.
The course is free.
The course is free. You pay for it in your income tax, I suppose. But so advertising is really critical. Advertising is important too, because when parents decide to pursue a parent training program, it's oftentimes a decision that has gone on over a period of months or even years. And they realize that they may be having difficulty, or they're thinking that it would be something that would make sense, or they're hearing themselves saying the same things that they heard their parents say, and they want to change. And so parents have often thought about maybe taking a parenting course for a long period of time, but just really weren't at that point yet. And if you talk to parents who have enrolled in parenting programs, they'll often say, well, a couple of years ago I saw that flyer that the school sent home, and I thought, well, maybe sometime, and I put it away, and then I saw it again, and I saw it the next term, and I saw a poster, and I saw that newspaper ad. But there oftentimes is a period in which they go from a stage of maybe contemplating, if you like Prochaska's models, the decision to participating in a parent program, to maybe getting ready to it, starting to think about it, looking at options, thinking about the times, and then finally making the decision. So advertising serves a really important function. We've had a lot of parents say, I didn't enroll in the course for a couple of years, but it was really helpful just knowing that it was available, just knowing that if things got really difficult, that was an option that I could take advantage of. So advertising parenting courses, even if you don't enroll parents now, is an important part of that process of getting ready to make changes. And it's an important option that parents know is available. So advertise, advertise, advertise. One of the things that I said we like is our neighborhood schools. They have the physical plants to run large group parenting programs. They typically have free parking. They're often located in areas that people are comfortable with. We have a belief that there's something good about getting parents into schools. Oftentimes the evening is a little less intimidating. None of the teachers are around, the principal's not there. Parents start to feel more comfortable in the school. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 weeks in a school, and you start to feel like you have to kind of own it there, and you're much more comfortable. So we think that for some parents, running to the school desensitizes them to a place that's important for them to go. So we like neighborhood school locations, but we run in community centers, we run in churches, we run in any place that looks like it provides a good physical plant for us. And we often just will approach a setting and say, we're interested in looking for places that we could run a parenting program. This looks like a great location. Is that something that you would consider? And churches and schools are typically very supportive of that. So we like neighborhood school locations, but really any community location would work well for us. We try to plan a combination of day and evening workshops to give parents a choice in decisions about that. As I said, we try to arrange childcare that for a significant number of parents constitutes a deal breaker. If we can provide childcare, then they can take advantage of it. If we can't, they're really unable to participate.
So what does childcare look like when the parents are in training? Are they like in an adjacent room?
They're typically relatively far away from the parents, so that parents can't hear their kids' voices, because you really can't concentrate when you can hear your own kids. Oftentimes in a gym or a recreational area of the school. Schools are good, again, because they have a number of options, and they're kids' social skills activity groups, so they have games and recreational opportunities and snacks, but also a chance to work on social skills and a chance for leaders to demonstrate all of the strategies that we're going to be teaching parents in the course of the program. Yes?
I was just going to ask, do you break the child care down, the groups, into ages, or do you just, whatever kids happen to come, you kind of make it work?
We try to have enough leaders that we can break the kids into age-based groups. Yes?
My question was, do you have like structured rules for the child care, or is it just something that you allow more latitude for, or is it like within the manual described exactly how you should do it?
There's a chapter in our manual that details the conduct of kids groups. So we try to run it as a fairly highly structured program. We don't think that 8 weeks in the kids group is going to make a significant contribution to social skills development. There are some good studies by Carolyn Webster Stratton in the Incredible Years program that show that a longer and more systematic kids program can contribute to outcomes, but it really in our program is an opportunity for childcare. We try to, as I said, run the program at consistent times in the year, the fall, the winter, the spring, and we want to reduce the waiting time. So the point at which parents arrive at that decision to enroll in a parenting program, we hope that the wait time won't be long. We want to capitalize on that readiness that's there when it's available. Parents often reach a point where they're motivated to change, and if we can take advantage of that, then we can often be more helpful. We have typically in COPE programs, parents just register. They don't have to go through one of our children's mental health service providers. They can just come out to the course and register for it in the way that they would for any other of the many continuing education programs that are available in our community. So we typically allow parents to register directly. We try to provide language options where possible, try to train leaders in different languages. We've also run groups where we had subgroups who worked in a particular language with a parent acting as the subgroup leader who could communicate back and forth with the group. And so there are a variety of ways that we can try to make these programs available in different language options. Now, if we're going to start a COPE program, we typically start with what we call information night, and that's a 1-2 hour session. And the purpose of information night is for parents to come out and see the setting in which the group is going to be conducted and meet some other parents who are thinking about participating and meet the leader and find out a little bit about the program so that they can make a decision about participating. So we do a couple of things at information night. First thing we do is to set up the room very much the way that I've set it up here. So we may have 5, we may have 6 tables. We typically have chairs that kind of go around the tables in a circular fashion. We try to arrange the chairs so that everybody in the group can make eye contact with the leader. So when you're standing in the front of the group, you want to make sure that you've slid everyone around sufficiently that you can make eye contact. As you're going to be interacting with people throughout the group, by making eye contact and interacting. And so, for example, I would probably slide you guys around a little bit in this table, move you over a chair, move you over a chair, move you over a chair, so I didn't lose a person here. So we try to set up the room in such a way that we can make eye contact with everyone in the room. And we try to have the tables close enough that if this group is giving a suggestion that this group can hear, but that they can also have subgroup discussions, because we're going to be moving back and forth between small group discussions and large group discussions. So this is about as far apart as I would want to go. And when I came in this morning, we moved the tables a little bit closer together. So structuring the room is a really important part of the learning process in a COPE program. And we like to say that structure determines function in large groups. So you want to make sure that you set the room up in such a way that it's comfortable, and set the room up in such a way that you're in a position to make eye contact with everybody in the group. We start out, we introduce the leaders. We let parents just come in, and in the same way that we did for you here, you just found a table that you felt comfortable at. And we let parents sit wherever they want, and there are real complex sorting rules that people use to decide, where they feel like sitting, and they often find somebody that sort of makes them feel like they would be welcome in this group, and they'll have a seat there. And where do you think they'll be next week? The same place. Is that all over the world? It's one of those cultural universals. Is that when you've got that seat, that's your seat. No one's going to sit there because that's your seat, and you're not going to sit in somebody else's. So once people sit down in a group, they tend to stay there, and they feel very comfortable in that group. Now, inevitably in a parenting program, there's attrition. Not all of the parents who are here on the first night are going to be here on session 6 or 7. So if groups get smaller, we may put them together. And people are a little uncomfortable with that, but you want to have groups that are large enough that you can have a good discussion. You can get some different ideas, but small enough that everyone gets a chance to participate. So sometimes they'll say, well, we just want to be one group. And we say, well, let's break you into some smaller subgroups. So 5 tends to be about an optimal number for subgroups in large group discussions. Again, large enough that you can have interesting discussion and different ideas and different points of view and different suggestions, but small enough that everyone gets a chance to participate. And there are some other reasons why we like a group of around 5, and I'll talk about some of the roles that different people play in group process later on in the workshop. Then what we do is we describe the group for parents. Our research shows that a lot of parents are hesitant about groups. They love them once they're in there, but the idea of joining a group is something that parents are oftentimes a little bit uncomfortable with. And they don't know what goes on in groups. And they've seen stuff on television, and they've heard people talk about what goes on in groups. And so what we want to do is demystify it and tell them a little bit about what's going to happen in the COPE group. So we introduce the idea of a COPE group, and we talk a little bit about the structure of groups, that we get together in small subgroups, and we talk about the different activities that we're going to go through in each session. We'll talk about successes that you've had at home. We'll take a look at video and talk about that, and so forth. We'll talk about the goals of the program. We'll go down through each session, and we don't say today we're going to work on when-then strategies. We say today we're going to work on strategies for more successfully getting kids to do what you want them to do. Get ready for bed, get ready for school, get started on their homework, and so forth. So we talk about some of the general goals of the program, relationship building, and so forth. We put a lot of emphasis on parental expectations, and a lot of parents come to a group like this and they're feeling unsuccessful, that they've had difficulty, they've tried things that have not worked out well, and they've lost confidence in themselves as parents. And they have very low self-efficacy, if you would. But at the same time, they expect that you should be able to tell them pretty quickly a few things that they can do that are going to solve problems that have been developing for years. And so parents oftentimes have have very high and unrealistic short-term outcome expectations. And they'll be very frustrated on session 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 when they don't see those changes, because they're not going to happen. So one of the things we want to do to them is talk to them a little bit about the program from an educational perspective. This is going to be a workshop. We're going to work on some strategies. Each session we're going to build and add a strategy, and by the 5th or the 6th or the 7th session, you'll have a pretty good package of strategies, and then you can start working on some of the kinds of difficulties that you've talked about. But it's going to take some time. And don't expect that you're going to see a big shift in your kids. In fact, kids don't like change sometimes, and you start changing things as a parent and maybe changing expectations and introducing some structure. Kids are going to try to make things the way they used to be. So you should anticipate that you may encounter some difficulties. So we try to develop more reasonable short-term outcome expectations, but to get parents to think in the long term. And all through the COPE program, we're going to do that. We're going to encourage parents to say, well, supposing you did what you suggested tonight, and maybe you tried it again consistently over the next couple of weeks, maybe you stuck to it for the rest of the school term, 3 or 4 months. Maybe even the rest of the school year, that this just became a kind of consistent routine around your house. What would happen over time? And most parents recognize that almost anything they do is not going to have much of an impact in the short term. But little things done consistently over a period of time, just taking the time to show interest in kids, giving kids a little bit of special attention, is not going to make a difference tonight or tomorrow or the next day, but over time, parents usually anticipate that could have a major impact on their relationships with their kids and on their kids' willingness to talk to them about issues in adolescence that are more complicated. So we try to encourage parents to develop reasonable longer-term outcome expectations, and we're going to reinforce that notion throughout the program. That little things over long periods of time make a big difference. We introduced the participants in the program very much the way that we did with you this morning. We asked parents to just go around and tell us their name and tell us who lives at their house, if they're comfortable, and one of their goals for the program. And so parents will say, well, I'm Chuck, and I have 3 kids, and my son Mark is 5, and my daughter is 8, and I also have a 15-year-old around the house. And I'm here because my 5-year-old is just driving me crazy. I'm trying to get him, off to kindergarten in the morning, and it's just a battle every day. And now the 8-year-old's into it, and so I need some help with school and getting kids ready for school. And parents will go around, and they'll recognize that a lot of parents are having the same kinds of difficulties that they are. They're experiencing the same kinds of problems. They're just as frustrated, and that's a really important part of the program. The leader's role here is to create a sense of shared goals and expectations, and say, sounds like there's a number of you who are kind of having a battle around morning times in school, and that's something that we're going to try to work on. And it sounds like bedtime is a difficult time for a lot of parents, and there are a number of you who are here, and your partners aren't able to participate. But for the leader just to point out similarities, because one of the things that parents are doing on that first night is deciding, are the people here like me? Do we have anything in common? Is this a program that will be helpful for me? And so the leader's job is to create that sense of shared experiences and shared goals. And that introduction is important. The leader's job is also in an introduction to keep a lid on it. This isn't a time for parents to share a lot of depth. You want parents to limit the amount of self-disclosure that they do, so we try to keep them brief. So just a minute or 2 each, tell us a little bit about why you're here. If parents go into too much depth and start to self-disclose things, then other parents in the group are going to get really uncomfortable. And they're going to think, this isn't really what I came here for. And those parents who may have self-disclosed too much are going to go home and think, "Ew, maybe I told a little bit too much here," and may not feel comfortable coming back. So the leader's job is to really put the lid on it, and that's a difficult thing to do. You do have to kind of impose some structure and limits, because oftentimes when parents find somebody who's prepared to listen to things, they really want to talk about it. So the leader's job is to limit self-disclosure, and the best way to do that is to keep it really brief, just not more than a minute each, just a couple of things, and move along. Yes? You know, we used to do that. We used to run the program in a children's mental health outpatient clinic, and kids were referred, and they went through multidisciplinary assessments, and we took a look at them, and people would make a decision about whether or not parents were groupable or might benefit from a group. And over years and years and years and years and years of doing that, we found that we just could not reliably estimate who would be interested in a program and who might benefit. And I can think of lots of parents that I worked with over the years that I think clinical colleagues didn't think a group would be a good format for them, and they just thrived in it. And so we really just ask parents. We say, come on out and hear about the group, and we'll tell you what's going to go on, and you make that decision. So we really we want parents to make that decision. And I just don't think professionals are real good at reliably making that choice.
Are they grouped into ages in terms of the kids, developmentally? Are the parents?
We run the program. There are as I was saying earlier, a series of different versions of the program. There's Right from the Start, which is a program for parents of infants. There's Coping with Toddler Behavior, which is a program for parents of 1.5 to 3-year-olds. There's Cope for 3 to 12-year-olds, which is what we're working on here, and then Cope for parents of adolescents. So there are specific parenting issues at each of those developmental stages that are different, so we run it in that way. But another issue is I think you raised is whether or not you might group parents at a particular subgroup whose kids are the same age. And we have done that on occasion with the idea that the more shared experiences and concerns and goals parents have at a group, the more cohesive that group will be. But over time, we've just allowed parents to come in and choose a subgroup that makes sense to them.
Have you found any differences with parents of the particular children that show the concern that they're having? The age group of those children, I don't know how I'm trying to ask this. The parents, say, if you have a parent that has a 3-year-old that's exhibiting behavior, a parent of a 15-year-old that's exhibiting behavior, do you find a difference in the parents that are more willing to come? Like the older the child is, maybe not so many parents would like to come to or participate in the program, or the younger children's parents are more apt to participate in the program? Have you found that?
In our research, one of the factors that drives utilization of parenting programs is how severe the child's difficulties are perceived to be. And more important than symptoms, the impact that it's having on families. So parents of more difficult kids are typically, there's more motivation to think about making changes in parenting skills. And I think our experience is that parents of adolescents are really motivated. That it's such a difficult time. It's so helpful to talk to other parents. But there's also a sense that there's not as much that you can do, and that adolescents are very, very difficult to work with sometimes. And so parents like the support, they like to learn skills, but they also recognize that this is going to be a difficult thing. I think parents of preschoolers see pretty quickly that you can accomplish some meaningful changes in preschoolers. Adolescents are much more difficult. So their parents of adolescents are motivated. I think they seek out the chance to talk to other parents. It's really important. But at the same time, I think they recognize that they know that this has been a difficult child for a long period of time, and change is going to be a challenge. So, yeah, I think there is motivation.
One thing that I've noticed in my recent move to Miami is that a lot of the childcare provided is sort of a family event. And a lot of parents, friends, aunts, uncles, grandparents take care of the children as well. Have you ever done any studies including more general caregivers rather than just the children's parents, or do you encourage them to come attend the sessions?
That's a really good question. We really encourage whoever wants to come out to the parenting group. Have had older adolescents who have childcare responsibilities, who come along. We've had lots of grandparents come along over the years. We always have parents who are separated but feel that they need to be on the same page, who are willing to work on this. So the kinds of skills that you work on in a parenting program are just general skills that are going to be useful for anyone. So we encourage anyone who's willing to participate to come on out. We have a fair number of parents in particularly our early morning workshops in the daytime who are in the care of Child Protective Services. Yeah. And that's a challenging group of parents to work with. They're angry and upset, and they're not willing to trust professionals, and they don't have a choice in being there. Our data is that they do benefit, though. We think that one of the reasons they do is that this is a program in which we encourage parents to discuss things and talk about errors on tapes and generate solutions, as opposed to a didactic program. If we were saying you're doing this wrong and this is what you need to do. So we think that the process is one that makes it a little bit easier for court-ordered parents to participate. We don't have any formal research data on that, but that's been our experience. If you ask parents at the end of the program what was most helpful about the COPE program, they'll often say that first night. Just finding out that there were other parents who were going through the same thing, that I wasn't alone, that I used to think my son was really, really difficult, and I realized that there are a lot of other kids that are just the same way. Or parents will say, I used to think my kid was really, really difficult, and now I know he is. But a group provides perspective that often parents individually have a hard time with. Parents, an interesting thing about parenting programs is they're configured in such a way that we meet on a weekly basis, and that's not the way adults learn. It's a convenient way to organize programs. It works in a way that makes sense to us as service providers, but weekly every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock isn't necessarily the best way to organize learning for adults. And we find there are a group of parents that come in and they go through every session. They're there, and they do well. There's another group of parents that will come, and they'll start out, and after a session or two, they'll say, this isn't really what I was expecting, and they'll drop out. And we have a third group of parents who will go through 3, 4, 5 sessions and then discontinue the program. And we always tell parents on information night, sometimes work schedules, sometimes families get sick. If for any reason you can't complete the program, come back and take it again. And so we have parents who will go through, and they'll come back and they'll say, well, I took the COPE program last year, and I had 3 or 4 sessions, but I wasn't able to complete it, so I want to come back and take another shot at it. And they'll get through maybe 8 sessions this time and work on another set of strategies. First round, they build relationship skills. Second round, they work on transitional strategies. We have a group of parents who they'll come through 3 times and do it in chunks. So sometimes people need a chance to learn some things and then make some changes, make some adjustments, let that settle in, and then move on to that. So we encourage parents to think of this as an educational exercise, and they can complete it now, or they can work on it in chunks, and we get all combinations of those. One of the things we do in the program, and I'm going to ask you guys to do a little bit of this here in a moment, just to give you a sense of what it's like, is ask parents to think about what the benefits of participating in the program might be. So a leader might do something like this. So that this is going to be 10 weeks, and it's 2 hours each session, and you're going to need to work on strategies at home during the week, and it's a fairly large time commitment. So despite that, we want you to think a little bit now about what some of the benefits might be in taking the time to participate in the program. For you as a parent, or maybe for your kids, what are some of the reasons why you might want to take the time to do this? So let me just ask you to go ahead and suggest some reasons. Pretend like you're a parent. Okay, a chance to work on a better relationship with your kids. Other people agree with that? One of the things you might do? What are some of the other advantages of taking the time to participate in a parenting course? Fiona? Okay, a lot of folks talked about getting ready to school in the evening, transitions as being a difficult time, and if you could figure out how to manage those a bit more efficiently, then you save yourself some time. Do people agree with that? Maybe learning to manage some of the difficult times that all parents have to contend with? This is a question we sometimes ask of parents. We call these attributional discussions, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you took the time to participate in a program like this, what's the message that you'd be giving your kids? What are you really saying in taking the time to do that?
That you really care about them, that you're willing to give up all this time just to become a better parent to them.
So you want to be the best parent that you can, and you're willing to put the time into that? People agree? Yeah. The kids learn anything from your taking the time to participate in a program like this? Yeah. You could work on some skills, maybe work on a better relationship with your kids, work on managing transitions that are difficult for most parents more effectively. Kids are going to learn anything from watching you do this. So kids are watching and learning from you. What kinds of things do you think they might learn?
That learning is okay with parents. Everybody learns.
Okay, so it's important to continue to learn things as a parent. People agree with that?
Well, my husband doesn't want to change. And so I'm coming here a little bit skeptical. Like, I'm really not sure if this is going to make our marriage worse, whether it's going to make it more worse or divorce
Yeah.
in terms of changing.
So you're kind of going to wait and see. And
I'm going to wait and see and also wondering how I'm going to handle that with my husband.
okay, so there are a number of folks here who are here and their partners aren't with them. And one of the things we might want to talk about in the program is how to share what you've learned here at home, different ways of doing that. So we'll talk about that. Because it sounds like there are a number of folks here whose partners aren't with us. So you get the idea, and we spend some time going around getting parents to generate some of the advantages of participating, what things they might learn that would be different for them as a parent, things their kids might learn, and if you get a group to think about that, then they'll generally decide that kids are learning about parenting by watching their parents, and that if they learn to parent more effectively, their kids are going to parent their grandkids more effectively. So parents begin to see that intergenerational nature of parenting skill. We talk a little bit about it from a more affective level. What's the message you communicate in taking the time to do that? That it's never too late to learn, that you're always learning as an adult, that kids are important, that you're going to put all the time you can into being the best parent you can. Those are affective messages which often motivate parents. And then we ask, again, the long-term question. Supposing you took the time to do this and you build better relationships, and you learn to manage some transitions that are often a battle for a lot of families more effectively, and you stick with that over time. What's likely to happen? What are the long-term effects for you as parents of that? And parents generally recognize, again, that some investment now in building better relationships and managing transitions more effectively and dealing with some of the conflicts that inevitably they have with their kids are going to pay off in longer-term improved relationships. So we try to get parents to think about some of the advantages of participating. This is a really powerful discussion, and most parents are there, and they've thought about it from their perspective. They've thought about a few reasons, but they haven't thought about it in the depth that a large group can think about what the benefits of participating might be. So we encourage parents to generate the rationales for participating in the program. Now, let me say something about the structure of COPE group sessions. All of the sessions are conducted in pretty much the same structure, with the exception of the first session, which doesn't have a homework review because parents didn't have a session last week. But we start out with a brief social phase where parents have an opportunity to talk to each other, have a cup of coffee, get comfortable in the room. Then we begin with a subgroup review where we ask each subgroup to take some time and talk about some of the situations where they use strategies that we worked on last week and they thought they handled it well. Then we take a look at video and watch some errors on videotape and troubleshoot that. The leader will spend 20 minutes modeling the strategies that the parents have been talking about in 3 different situations that parents generate that would be useful for them. Maybe bedtime, maybe dinner table, maybe riding in the car. We'll get parents to brainstorm, think of some different ways that a strategy might be used, some different situations that it might be applied to generalize, if you would, those skills to a broader range of situations. And we'll do some role playing, give parents a chance to practice strategies, think about exactly what they would say, practice using those words, anticipate how their kids might respond, and begin building, strengthening those skills. And then plan homework. Identify specific situations that they can apply those strategies to, develop a homework reminder, think about where to post it strategically, and monitor their use of those strategies. And the curriculum in a COPE program typically are as follows: an information night, a chance to introduce the program, relationship building skills, attending, roared and balanced attending might be session 2. Planned ignoring and ways of avoiding conflict, session 3. We introduce point systems early in the program on session 4 so that there's a chance for parents to troubleshoot and work with those and talk with other parents about how to make point systems work effectively. Then transitional strategies, transitional warnings, and then planning ahead. And again, we're building a series of strategies that are necessary prerequisites to the more complicated strategies that come later on. Point systems 2, response cost, losing points for serious problems, and then time out from positive reinforcement. We try to have 2 sessions to deal with those strategies so that parents have a chance to think through an effective timeout strategy that makes sense to them as parents. And is likely to work effectively, and then a final closing session. So this would be a typical 10-session COPE course. We've run the program longer. We've run it as long as 16 sessions. The difficulty we have is that there are very few parents that are likely to get through 16 sessions, and so they don't get to some of the key strategies that are positioned at the end of the program. Yesterday, we looked at data from systematic reviews that showed that the inclusion of timeout, as an example, is associated with substantially larger effect sizes in programs. And so if parents drop out early or they don't complete the program, it's timeout, which they're almost inevitably going to miss. And that's for a lot of families, that's a key strategy.